Okay, so this video is going to go through a double entry bookkeeping question at junior cert level. Here's the question. It's about Allen Limited, and it says record the following transactions in the analyzed cash book, post to the general ledger, and extract a trial balance. And it says to use the following column headings: bank, sales, VAT, and capital on the debit side. Bank purchases, VAT, wages, and rent on the credit side. And there's a list of some transactions for the month of July. Now, I've already written out some of my analyzed cash book. I'm going to fill out the figures in a moment. This is record book number 1 if you were doing it in your record books, or perhaps you're using a template. Over here is our general ledger, which again I have the accounts pre-written, but I'll explain them when we come to them. And then, and of course, that would be record book 3 if you're working in your record books, or again, perhaps a template. And then our trial balance is here, a small trial balance, which you can do in record book 2 or on any sheet of paper, really. So let's look at the very first transaction. It says on the 4th of July, shareholders invest 85,000 euro. Now that is money in, so we go up to the debit side of our analyzed cash book and we put 85,000 in bank. And then it must also go in one other column, and of course capital is the place that it should go. Now, on the 8th of July, cash sales lodged, and that's money in. We sell something and we lodge the money, and we lodged 50,000. Of that 50,000, 40,000 of it, sorry, 42,000 of it is actually sales, and 8,000 of it we keep in a separate account because it is VAT we must pay to the government. On the 17th of July, we paid wages via a check, so that's money out. Again, it must go in the bank account, 13,000, and then of course in one other analysis column, and we think wages is the most appropriate one there. Then we have cash sales lodged again on the 26th of July, so we go up to here. I've already pre-written in the details to speed myself up. So it's 18,000. The amount is actually 15,000 of sales and 3,000 of VAT. And then we have the 29th of July where you have purchases. That's something we bought. We wrote a check, so of course that is money out. Now the purchases, slightly different phrasing here. They give you 35,000 and then they tell you there's 20% VAT on top of that. So actually we can't know how much we had to pay in total until we calculate that. So 35,000 is the actual purchases. The VAT is 20%. Now on your calculators, 20% of 35,000 will be 7,000. And then we can add these two back, 35 and 7 back here to get actually the 42,000, which is the total amount we need to pay for that. And then finally on the last day of the month we pay rent of 4,000 euro. So we put that into our pre-prepared 4,000 euro, and we put that also in the rent column, 4,000. Of course, when you're doing the question, you'll have to put in the dates and the details and the general ledger as the folio and the numbers as I have done there. Now, then you need to total up all of the columns. Now, I've already done this via Excel, so the total here for sales is 57, 11, 85. The total for purchases is 35, 7,000 for VAT, 13 for wages, 4,000 for rent. We need to balance the account, so the balance, we need to balance the bank column. So if we look at the bank columns, which one is larger? Well, on the debit side, this adds up to 153. If you add that on your calculator, that is by far and away the biggest side. So we put that between the lines on both. And then above the lines, how much is required here? What is the balance to be carried down? How much is required here to make the credit side up to 153? Well, I think that's 94,000. And that's the balance CD to be carried down at the end of the month. And then you bring that balance down on the first day of the next month on the debit side, on the larger side. below the lines. And that is step one completed. That is the Analyze Cash Book fully complete. Now then you need to transfer to the general ledger, but the principle here of double entry applies. For every debit, there must be an equal and opposite credit. So therefore, these three numbers here that I have highlighted in yellow, we're going to take those from the debit side here, and we're going to place them on the credit side of the relevant accounts. So the first one is sales. From the debit side of the bank account, it goes to the credit side of the sales account. The date is the end of the year, or the end of the month, it doesn't matter. The details is bank, coming from the Analyze Cash Book. The folio is ACB, coming from the Analyze Cash Book. In fact, this is why GL is the folio here, because it's cross-referencing back to the general ledger. And the amount is 57, so we put 57,000 on the credit side of our sales account. Then we do our second one, which is VAT, 11,000, coming from the debit side here. We send it to the credit side of the ledger. 11,000. Same date, same details, same folio, 11,000. And the 85,000 for capital, coming from the debit side of the bank account, it goes to the credit side of our ledger. Again, all of the details and the date remain the same, 85,000. Now we move to these analysis columns. Of course, we don't need to transfer the bank column because we already have a balance for that. It's 94,000. So we're going to look at these four. And these four are purchases, VAT, wages, and and rent. And these are going to come from the credit side of the bank account to the debit side of the ledger. Again, following our double entry principle. For every debit, there has to be a credit, and for every credit, there must be a debit. So therefore, this 35,000 comes from the credit side of our bank account to the debit side of the V8 of the purchases account. Purchases is down here. 35,000. Same date, same details, same folio. Now VAT, we don't need to draw another VAT account in our ledger because we already have one. So we're just going to place it on the appropriate side, on the debit side of the existing VAT account. 7,000. Wages, coming from the credit side here of the bank account, goes to the debit side of the wages account. 13. And finally, the rent comes from the credit side here to the debit side of the rent account, and that is 4,000. Now we have all of our bank information and all of our analysis columns transferred, double entered to the general ledger. All of these accounts in the general ledger except one have only a single entry, so therefore the side and the balance is self-evident. However, with the VAT account, it actually has two, so we do need to balance this off. The total of the largest side is 11,000. You put that between the lines on both sides. And now what is our balance? Well, above the lines on the smaller side, there is 4,000 required there to balance that. And you bring that down below the lines on the larger side. It's the same balancing for a ledger account as it was for the Analyze Cash Book. Now we have completed all of our double entry. All we need to do now is we need to do our trial balance, and this is so we can confirm that we have double entered correctly. We need to check that our debits equal our credits. So you just put in each individual account from the ledger: sales, VAT, capital, purchases, wages, rent, and not forgetting in our summary that we also have a bank account. It's called an Analyze Cash Book, but it's just a cash or a bank account. We're going to put in the balance for each of these. Now this is the debit column, and this is the credit column. So, sales, now we're not switching sides here, we're just summarizing what we have. Sales has a credit of 57,000. VAT, now VAT is tricky, but when we did the balance, it was brought down on the credit side, so therefore the 4,000 goes on the credit side. Capital, of course, self-evidently is on the credit side. Purchases is an expense, it's on the debit side, 35,000. Wages is on the debit side, 13,000. Rent is on the debit side, 4,000. And finally, we have our bank account, which has a debit balance of 94. Now, when you enter all of those, you get on your calculator and you see and you add up both columns. Of course, Microsoft Excel did it for me here. And when these two match, 146 and 146, well, then you can be pretty confident that you have done your double entry bookkeeping correct. This is the cross check, which proves that we have double entered everything from the analyzed cash book to the ledger. Debits equaling credits, credits equaling debits. Just to recap very quickly on that, with the question, we entered everything into the analyzed cash book and we achieved our bank balance. Then we took the debits from here and sent them to the credit of the ledger, color coded. And we took the credits from here and sent them to the debit of the ledger, color coded. One of them we had to balance off, VAT, and we did that. And then finally, we just summarized our work with the trial balance to get a balanced trial balance at the end of the question. Hope this helps. Thank you.